Hi, everyone. Good afternoon here from California, or good evening or good morning, wherever you may be. Thank you so much for coming today to this session, which is focused on the Pro Bono experience, the Pro Bono program at Berkeley Law. We're really lucky today to be joined by Deborah Schlosberg, who oversees and runs that program, but also by three of our current students who've engaged in some way with the program, and we'll be able to shed that perspective as well. So I'm going to introduce myself, and I'm going to have the rest of the people on this panel introduce themselves, and then we're going to launch pretty quickly into questions. There will be no one monitoring the chat, but if you use the Q&A function, students and others will be keeping an eye on that, and there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end, we hope. So if you have questions, please do either put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A or save them for the end. So I'm Kristen Thies Alvarez. I'm the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid here at Berkeley Law. And Chelsea, do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Chelsea Hackett. I'm the Outreach Coordinator in the JD Admissions Office. I'll be helping with the Q&A and monitoring it later on. And I'll turn things over to Deborah to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Deborah Schlosberg, and I do get to direct the Pro Bono program at Berkeley Law, which I feel incredibly lucky to do because I get to work with the most phenomenal, passionate, smart, and community thinking students who you get to see three of today. So I'll pass it on to Yara to introduce herself, and then so on and so forth.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yara, she, her pronouns. I am a 2L at Berkeley Law. Am I supposed to say anything else? I think that was it. Perfect. I'll pass it to Evan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Evan. My pronouns are he, him. I'm also a 2L. And then to talk about which pro bono organizations I'm specifically in, I'm in the Foster Education Project and the Police Review Project, which I won't spoil because Chantel has something to say about that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chantel. I use she, her pronouns. I am also a 2L. I'm in the Police Review Project with Evan and also participated in the Clean Slate Clinic with Yara.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your afternoon. So I have questions that also attempt to direct, but you're also welcome to contribute. If you have something to say about any of them, don't hesitate. And as I suggested, we were just chatting a moment ago. I don't know that I knew what pro bono meant when I was applying to law school or thinking about law school. So just so that we're on the same page and before we go any further, Deb, can you define pro bono for us, or pro bono work?
Absolutely. And I should say that there are slightly varying definitions, but at Berkeley Law, what we mean when we say pro bono work is voluntary, uncompensated legal work that's supervised by licensed attorneys and that creates access to legal services to clients who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford representation, or it's legal work that furthers the public interest or social justice. So that's our definition of pro bono, and I think we're going to talk a little bit later on about how that differentiates from clinics and other things at the law school, but that's generally the definition of pro bono.
Great, thanks. That's very helpful. So sticking with you, Deb, what are the sort of facets or aspects of the pro bono program here at Berkeley Law? And then what, if anything, makes the Berkeley Law program distinct from others that might exist at other law schools?
Sure. So at Berkeley Law, once you kind of accept that definition of what pro bono is, students can engage in pro bono work in a variety of different ways. So we have a program called Connect, through which attorneys in the community sometimes identify a need that exists and then reach out to Berkeley Law students to seek their support. The predominant way that students at Berkeley Law engage in pro bono work is through our student-initiated legal services projects, or SLIPs. They're group projects that are led by students like those you see right now, second and third year students that have engaged in that work as 1Ls. The work is predominantly performed by first year law students. Kristen asked what's unique about Berkeley. That is incredibly unique about Berkeley Law and pro bono work is the enormous role that our students play in leading that work and partnering with community organizations. So all of the legal work is supervised by licensed attorneys in the community. but it is driven by our Berkeley Law students. And we'll talk more later, but each of those projects at one time in its history was created through the innovation of our Berkeley Law students, their passion and commitment to that work. And then we also have another program called BLAST, our Berkeley Law Alternative Service Trips. And before the age of virtual work, that was the only way really that we engaged in legal services work in communities outside of the Bay Area. And it allowed our students to leave the immediate surroundings and enter into communities that could use the support of Berkeley Law students to further their work. Much like our work here, it's really important to Berkeley Law that we follow the lead of leaders in the community. So our BLAST program involves Berkeley Law students working under the supervision of licensed attorneys that are leaders and mainstay offices in those communities. But our students are lending their human power and burgeoning legal skills to support their work and learn about those communities. So those are a few of the different ways that students at Berkeley Law can engage in pro bono work.
So this is for the students then. There are obviously a couple of distinctions, including the ability to do a lot of this or all of this in the first year. And I'm just curious, and any of you or all of you can respond to this, whether and so to what extent the pro bono opportunities at Berkeley were part of your consideration when you were deciding ultimately where to attend law school. So if anybody wants to take a stab at that one, that would be lovely.
For me, the answer was yes. I came to Berkeley Law because I was interested in criminal law, and I saw that they had a police review project, which I did not see at any other law schools, which was really exciting for me. I put that in my Why Berkeley essay, and then I joined that once I got into Berkeley. So I was very happy that the path I set out to do, I ended up doing.
It was a huge part of my decision too. I, it was classes and the whole intellectual exercise is great for some people, but I learn by doing, and I like to feel useful and be of service to my community. And it was really important to me that I could start doing that right away. And that's one of the huge appeals of Berkeley Law, is that you could start literally within a couple of weeks of, when does the application drop, Deborah? It's 2-3 weeks in or something.
So it's such a good question, Yara. So yeah, the application to join SLIP starts a few weeks in, but this year, because of the humanitarian crisis that arose in Afghanistan, we actually had a pro bono project that I started promoting through Connect the second week of school. So it was the earliest we'd ever reached out to our student community in the academic year to invite folks to join a pro bono effort. We had 85 students sign up within a few days, and at least half of them were 1Ls, and they've been engaged in doing this work and filing humanitarian parole applications from the beginning of this semester. So Yara, you're right away.
Yeah, it felt like right away. So we're all in at the beginning. And just the variety and just during Admit Students Week, I was learning about all the slips, and everyone always said, if there's something you want to do that you don't see, start it, and that's always an option too. So that was all very appealing to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing that Yara said. I wanted to go to a law school where I could give back to communities that look and talk like me. And at the time, I don't know if things have changed now, but at the time I couldn't find another law school that would let me do pro bono work during my first semester and work with clients that early on. So that was just really, really appealing to me. So I was excited to be able to have the opportunity.
Well, my suspicions have been confirmed then, which is that, lots of people get into Berkeley have really wonderful options, and that there's, not a unlimited world of sort of distinctions between schools, many of which will give you a great education, but all of the other stuff matters too. I think a lot of our students do, as represented by these three, do choose Berkeley because of this ability to kind of roll up your sleeves and get to work from the very beginning. And so I'll ask a question that's really open to everybody, and I hope we can avoid the awkward Zoom silence if I don't designate someone. So it's always a thing. But there's a quote that's actually from Professor Oppenheimer that I think is probably on the website that says, some schools have a pro bono requirement, and at Berkeley Law, there's a pro bono culture. And I'm just wondering, and maybe I will start with Deb, whether you can kind of elaborate this and where you think that comes from or why it's important. It's sort of like a hard thing to grab onto. And so sometimes I find myself, even in admissions, like struggling to articulate kind of the cultural piece of the community. And I'm wondering if you have anything you might share.
So that's a really good question. I feel like the students can speak to it as well, if not better than I can, because they entered and kept that tradition and culture alive. And my hope is that that always happens, and I try to foster that, but it's really you all that are making that happen. To what Kristen said, we don't have a pro bono requirement at Berkeley Law, but that culture is really evidenced by the fact that over 90% of our first year law students do pro bono work in their first year. And then that number only grows, of course, as they go through law school in terms of a greater percentage of that class engaging in pro bono work. And I think that our students, and you all will correct me and elaborate, but I think our students decide to do pro bono work for a few different reasons. And I might turn off my background because I was thinking about this question and I was looking at, I don't know if you guys can see this.
The grand reveal of the background.
I have these signs in my office that different students have written. So they've told me why they do pro bono work. So the only acceptable use of power is to empower others. It keeps me connected to my community and reminds me why I came to law school. It's a way to do meaningful work as a law student. Let's do good in the world. Law school gives me the tools to do it, and I can't waste that privilege. So the list goes on and on and on, but these are all real students writing these. I really think in large part, it's because our students care and they want to reach their communities and they want to utilize the power and privilege that they're being given to create access to justice. I think secondarily that students appreciate the opportunity to engage in work where they're practicing their legal skills and learning how to be stronger advocates. Like Yara said, a lot of us learn by doing. So the Pro Bono program lives within our experiential education department at Berkeley Law, and that's because our students get to practice these skills. And that's a really special part of being able to do it as a first year law student, because as you go on to, your first summer internship as a law student, our students have experience. They've done this work as first year law students. So that's a really cool thing. I think also it's just an incredible way for students to build community with one another around things that they're passionate about and that they share with each other as a common interest, as well as creating relationships with community partner organizations and attorneys that they're working with. So I think those are a few of the things that drive the culture of pro bono at Berkeley, but I'd like to turn it over to the students because I think they can speak to it really authentically.
I absolutely, I agree with you as the sort of keepers of that culture where we are the, champions and supporters of it. I would be very interested in sort of if you feel like it's just in the air or sort of what's happening in the background that makes this such a large part of Berkeley. See?
I can go. I just don't want to go first 2 times in a row.
Well, now you have to.
Okay, well, I will say that it very much feels like, not to say that our classes, our one-on-one classes are dreary, but I feel like everyone gets their light or happiness from their pro bono work or their passion projects that you're doing. And then amidst 1Ls, whenever you're meeting new people, it's like, hi, what's your name? Where are you from? And then the next question is always what pro bono are you in? And then they're talking about it and then they're saying why they're doing it. And then you get to know more about them, their background, their passions and things like that. So it's really something that connects all the students, and it's an easy way to get to know people and figure out who they are, which is great when you're trying to meet new people.
Yeah, I would say, mostly when you're asking people, you're which project are you doing? Are you doing a project? What? Yeah. You just say, what slip are you in? I think that, I think it does really balance out the 1L experience. I mean, classes are hard, and it's really important to feel like, you know, you're doing something important, you know, because it's really easy to lose sight of it when you're knee deep in doctrine and all of that. So I think that's a reason why people like do that too. And also, if you're worried about finding like making friends or finding people who share the same interests as you, as Deborah was saying, like you're going to find your people in these projects. It's you know, you have to bid on the project and there's a whole selection process. So the project that you're in is something that is really important to you because you ranked it pretty highly. And that's usually why you got into the project. So, you know, being in shared struggle with people who care deeply about the same thing you care about is like the fastest way to like make connections on campus. So I would say it's a great opportunity to get your study groups rolling, get your friendships rolling, and, you know, just feel like you're part of a community.
I completely agree with Yara and Evan, and also with the sign that Deborah just had that said, like, law schools give me the tools to do it, and I can't waste that privilege. I just think being in law school is a very privileged space to be in, and I'm always just kind of thinking, like, what can I do to leverage that privilege? And I think pro bono, in my opinion, is a very small ask to do that, and that's another reason, like, why I choose to do pro bono work.
So we've talked about, I mean, I think you said 90% of 1L students do pro bono work. So yeah, you would be the outlier, sort of not to. You awkwardly don't know how to answer with what slip you're doing. But I also am aware that at graduation, not 90% of our graduates are going into public interest work, right? So, and obviously I don't see at all those things like even in conflict or even necessarily in tension with one another, but I'm sort of curious from anyone's perspective, especially if any of the students think that they're definitely going to private practice, you know, why, what they feel like the benefit of pro bono work is, if that's not sort of their immediate or long-term career goal. And some of you have already touched on this a little bit, but if you want to elaborate on some of those other benefits, and I will pick on Yara actually for this one to start.
Sure. I mean, I think that I'm definitely going to end up back in public interest, but I'm starting off in private practice. I think that it's like wonderful to get your advocacy chops going right away and, you know, work out the kinks of interacting with clients and how to, you know, advocate for them. And when you have, you know, supervision and you have a whole team around you that's like rooting for you and supporting you, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to start becoming, you know, good at your craft, basically, just like, you know, perfecting your craft before you're out there in the real world. So I think it's really important in that way too. And I think that, you know, doing pro bono is valuable experience no matter what you do when you graduate. I mean, doing a pro bono project in, you know, an environment where you may not have unlimited resources and you have to be a creative and resourceful and think outside the box. Like all of these skills are important no matter what kind of lawyer you're going to be. And also it takes the same discipline and time management, especially when you're doing it on top of your 1L curriculum. And employers love experience. I mean, they do. No matter where you go, if you have experience lawyering in any way or, you know, doing that kind of work, employers love it. And even if you start off at private practice, you could always, you know, end back up doing the exact same work that you did as a baby 1L in law school. You never know.
I often tell students, like, because many people ask about career outcomes, and I'm always like, you do realize that your first job after law school is not likely your forever job, right? Like it's, you know, it's your first job and we want to make sure you have it, but it is not probably the thing that you do forever for the rest of your life. And also, you know, I'm sure you've seen this, Deb, I feel very strongly that there's just not this sort of bright line between pro bono work. In fact, being a member of the profession requires you to do community work as an attorney, no matter what kind of an attorney you are, which people also
absolutely. Yeah, no, my opinion is that all of our students should be doing pro bono work, and that's important regardless of what path they're going to be entering. Professional responsibility includes creating access to justice by all attorneys, and the legal services bar just is not large enough to serve the legal needs that exist. And so I know when I went to law school, I am the first lawyer in my family, so I didn't really understand the relationship between how many people had legal problems and how many attorneys there were to solve them. and the importance that the private bar plays in creating access to justice and providing pro bono services. So all of our students who go into private practice, I'm so happy that they have the pro bono opportunities that they have in law school. And my hope and desire and expectation is that they'll continue to do pro bono work when they join a law firm, because they've developed that as part of their life and their practice, and they know how to do that. And so that is something that we encourage all of our students to do pro bono, and pro bono is a program for all students, regardless of what career path they're considering.
Okay, so this is a question for the students, and we'll maybe go Chantal and then Yara and then Evan. So one of the things that's funny, or like wonderful funny to me about Berkeley Law students, is when they really casually like rattle off all of the things that they're doing. So I'm gonna make you do that, where you talk about like what you did as a 1L, what you're doing right now, and sort of the various things that you're involved in, which could be student orgs, journals, slips, blast, connect, or anything else, whatever you can think of without a lot of time to prepare. So if you don't mind doing the Berkeley thing, like the most humble delivery of like the most impressive list of involvements ever, that would be awesome, just to give people an example.
Okay, I'll give it a go. So during my 1L year, I was in the SLIP, the Police Review Project, which focused on police accountability at Berkeley. I was in the Criminal Law Journal. That may be it. I think I stuck to like one and one. Okay, and then for 2L, I'm co-leading Police Review Project now. I'm in the Tech Journal, California Law Review, working as an ambassador with everyone here. I believe that's it. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, I'm in LaSalle, like working on their exec board as well. I think I got it all unprompted.
Yara, you're up.
I'm you even called on me. Okay. My first year, I joined 2 SLIPs. I was part of the Post-Conviction Advocacy Project, and that project helps people who are serving life sentences prepare for their parole hearing, and we represent them at their parole hearing as well. It's a long 2-year SLIP, so you're with your client one-on-one, well, a team with your client for a long time, which is the kind of work I like to do. And then the second SLIP I was in was the Prisoner Advocacy Network, and that is a correspondence-based SLIP. So we basically write to folks who are incarcerated, mostly jailhouse lawyers, but also people who, have no idea what they're doing, just got there also. And we just help them navigate the grievance process, or, seek out things that they need, like gender affirming care or an accommodation for a disability, or, how to report excessive force claims and whatnot, things like that. Oh, and the cool thing about that project, I didn't expect to do this, but I got to write part of a comment on a resentencing law that was coming up that came to law as a proposition, but the state was trying to add a bunch of barriers to it, and make folks who are incarcerated jump through a bunch of hoops for it. So it was really nice to write a comment on that, public comment on that. And then let's see, a bunch of affinity groups. Oh, I wasn't a blast though. Blasts are awesome. It's the Berkeley Law Alternative Service Trip. So instead of spring break, you spend your spring break partnered with one of these organizations in somewhere in the United States. And I did the blast in Kentucky. It was remote, but we still got to do some things. We worked in we basically held a divorce clinic. So we just help people file for divorce so they can move on with their lives. And then we also helped prepare a handout for tenants' rights. This was right around the pandemic when landlords were, doing their thing. And so we're just trying to help tenants stay housed, keep their housing and whatnot. And then let's see. So this year I continued on with the Post-Conviction Advocacy Project. I continued on with affinity groups. I'm in California Law Review with Chantal as well. We do clinics, but those are for credit, so technically not pro bono.
Okay, for me, I joined the Criminal Law Journal my 1L year, I was also in the police review project, which Chantel touched on. I was also in the foster education project, where you get paired with a local foster youth and you're their educational rights holder. So you advocate with their teachers and their principals to make sure their educational needs are met. Going into 2L, I joined the trial team, became a 1L tutor, became the leader for foster ed. I took a step back in police review. I haven't done a case like I did 2 last year, and I do miss it, but I haven't had time to do that this year.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me. I appreciate it. And actually, I'm sure that people who are watching this will appreciate it too. So Yara kind of hinted at this, and this maybe I'll ask Deb to answer this question for us. Can you clarify the relationship between the pro bono program and clinics or field placements? And obviously you've made the distinction between for credit versus just volunteer. But I'm also just curious for people, because I get this question a lot, like, can you do both? Should you do both? Like, how do people navigate their myriad options as a student at Berkeley Law?
Well, the students should probably respond to the last part, but I was thinking about this question and giggling that Berkeley Law students are never doing only one thing. So you just heard that. And so yes, our students do pro bono and clinic at the same time, or pro bono and field placement at the same time. I would say that almost every student that's done a clinic or a field placement has done pro bono in the past, or is currently continuing to do pro bono. The main difference that Kristen, that Dean Alvarez already identified, is that the field placement program and the clinical programs are academic programs. So you receive credit in exchange for the work that you are doing, whereas pro bono is uncompensated, so no payment, no academic credit. Another big difference is that you can't begin a field placement or enroll in a clinic until you're in your second year of law school. So our students begin their pro bono work in their first year of law school, and then many continue engaging in pro bono work either in the same project, or they take on a leadership role, or they're doing a pro bono project that's on their own with a supervising attorney, or a project that's come through the community through our Connect program, and they're in clinic, and they're at a field placement. And then Chantel and Yara, I mean, you guys could talk about this too, but I know from working with our colleagues that students will also, spend one semester in clinic and then do a field placement the next semester, or a clinic all year 1 year, and then a field placement the next semester, next year. But pro bono is a common thread throughout. And the kind of unique thing about pro bono is that when you sign up for it, you know the commitment that you're making. And sometimes it's a slip that has a 1 semester commitment, or a full year, or PCAP, the post-conviction advocacy project that Yara is a part of, is a longer commitment. But we also have pro bono where you're making a commitment for 1 clinic, or you're making a commitment for like a singular research project. And those are kinds of things that you can also sometimes balance more easily alongside clinic or a field placement. So I hope that's responsive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was thinking in my head, because I'm reading applications right now, like how there's so many things we're selecting for that aren't always at like the forefront of our consciousness. One of them clearly being the ability to multitask. So like, I don't really think about that when I'm reading files, but clearly that is something we must be looking for in some way, shape, or form. It would be hard to, learn that skill when you're just arriving at law school. And actually, so I have one follow-up question for you, Deb. So I know that pro bono is uncompensated, but there's a relationship between pro bono work and summer public interest funding. And I'm wondering if you could just talk about that relationship and kind of how it works.
Yeah, that's an important piece that the students are all very aware of. So at Berkeley Law, if you intend to spend your summer working at a nonprofit law office, a government office, or in judicial chambers, like working for a judge, you can apply for summer funding, for a summer grant, both as a first-year student and as a second-year student, and it is guaranteed by Berkeley Law. But you have to be eligible, you have to have completed at least 25 hours of pro bono work. So, so that is the relationship. And I work with students to engage them in pro bono work and help find opportunities. And then our career development office runs the process through which students apply for those grants. And Kristen, I know that you can speak authoritatively about this, but it is guaranteed as long as it's a qualifying employer and you've done the pro bono work to become eligible. And I know that the amount has increased recently, but I'm nervous to say it out loud because I don't want to get it wrong. But if somebody else is really confident, then I'll let them say what it is.
Well, the students can correct me, but I'm fairly sure it's $5,000 and $6,000.
That's what I thought too.
First and second summer, but it does change a lot. So if someone's watching this video and it doesn't go down, let me just be clear, but it has increased sort of, I don't know, at a fairly significant pace over the last couple of years. In part because we also, I guess, pick students who are really good advocates. And one of the things they're really good advocates for is themselves and the need for administrative, financial, logistical, and other forms of support by the institution and the administration to allow them to reach the goals that they have and to develop as the professionals that they want to be and that we so desperately need. So thank you, students, also for that work that you do that I know is similarly uncompensated. I wanted to ask, and then maybe this is for the students, but if any of you have done this or for Deb, so anyone could take a stab at it. One of my favorite things when people ask me about slips, which obviously is just one part of pro bono, but the student initiated legal projects, and I think that there are 40 this year, is that is the word student initiated or the phrase student initiated. So it's not law school saying here's what's available, it's students saying here's a need and we would like to be involved in responding to it or meeting it in some way. So how do people start a slip? And what does that look like? What can they expect? And then Deb, also, I think there are 4 new ones this year that maybe you want to talk about.
Sure. So yes, what is so unique about Berkeley is that these projects originate from student desire and identified need. And so some of our oldest slips have been around for 5 decades and given rise to full-fledged legal services offices like Centro Legal in Oakland, which is an incredible legal office, started as a slip at Berkeley Law. And they just celebrated their 50th anniversary a couple of years ago. So it's really a cool thing. And then as Dean Alvarez said, we have 4 new slips this year. And I'll talk about those in a moment. But the process for creating a new slip is basically a student reaches out to me and says, I have an idea. And then we start to talk about it and think about what the legal need is and where they are in their process of wanting to start a slip. So I think the earliest I ever talked to a student about creating a new slip was their first week of 1L. It did become a slip. It's amazing. It's our legal automation workshop. And it harnesses students' ability around tech and programming and the interaction between that and providing efficient and consistent access to legal services. And that slip is continuing to serve legal services organizations after that student graduated. So it's very exciting. So we sit down and talk. There is a paper application. There's a link to it on the Pro Bono website that students have to complete. And it's really there to walk them through the steps of creating a successful project and forcing them to think through all the different aspects of what makes a project successful. So that's identifying the partner organization, that's identifying the attorneys that are going to supervise the work and making sure they're committed to doing that work and mentoring and guiding our students that are engaged. It's figuring out how many students will join the project, what kind of work will they actually be doing, what is the need, is that need going to continue to exist? Because as a program and as a law school, we want to invest in projects that will live on. So we don't want to start a slip that will only exist for 1 year. We will start pro bono projects that respond to existing need, but for a slip, we want it to be something that would be ongoing, that our students can continue to join over the years and live on as a legacy to those that created it. And then the final step is that we ask the leaders that are founding that slip to do the work for 1 semester before it launches as a full-fledged project, so that we can ensure that it'll be a good experience for students that apply to join, and for the attorneys, that it'll be a good experience for them and the organization and the clients that they're trusting us to serve. So, and then what are the 4 new slips? I always get so excited about our new projects. Thank you, Yara. Are in no particular order because I don't have favorites. The new 4 projects are our legal obstacles veterans encounter, which are the Berkeley Law students are so creative and thoughtful and always come up with better names than me. The acronym for that is LOVE. And they serve the veteran community. And one of the really neat things about that project is that it was founded and is being led by Berkeley Law students who are veterans themselves. And it's a phenomenal project. I encourage you to read about it in more detail. And they're partnered with Swords to Plowshares, which is a legal services org that serves veterans. The next project, which is amazing, and this is a project where I started talking to one of the founders very early on, is the Free the Land project. So huge shout out to Alicia Arrington, one of the founding leaders that came to me early on about this project. And it looks at environmental sustainability, housing, land use law, and they do work with the Sustainable Economies Law Center in Oakland, founded by a Berkeley Law alum, Janelle Orsi. And then the next project, Clean Energy Leaders in Law. This was really exciting for me because I've had students over the last many years asking for pro bono opportunities related to clean energy and have reached out and created individual projects, but we hadn't had students kind of pick up the lift of creating a new slip around it. And so we're so excited to have this project, and it was incredibly popular this year. We have 20 new students in the project, and they're partnered with Grid Alternatives, which is a nonprofit dedicated to creating access to clean energy for low-income communities. And it's an awesome project. The supervising attorneys, one's a Berkeley Law alum and one's policy counsel at Grid Alternatives. And then the last one, but not least, the DA Accountability and Participatory Defense Project, created and led by Alaria Youssef and Cheyenne Smith. And it's a really cool project that is focused on movement lawyering. They are partnered with both a supervising attorney at the East Bay Community Law Center, our clinical partner, largest provider of free legal services in Alameda County, and with the Urban Peace Movement, which is a grassroots organizing group, and they do court monitoring. They meet with the DA monthly, and they're documenting what's going on in criminal courts in Oakland. So it's really cool stuff, and super excited to be working with the students to start those projects and bring students into the work this year.
Thank you so much. I can't remember, I mean, obviously there have been slips forever, but I feel like there was some moment in my past like 14 years where I was like, wow, there's 27 of them. And it wasn't that long ago. And then I was like, there's 32, I mean, 35, and now we're at 40. So, I mean, I think that just speaks to a variety of things, but not least to which is your work, Deborah, to sort of help inculcate this culture and sustain the work and make it successful, so there's a model moving forward. So thank you for all of that. So I have one last question, and this is, anyone can answer it. I think Deborah got a little head start because I told her this question was coming, but students, you can pull from your own experience or what you've heard elsewhere, and I'll share a personal experience too. So I know that the Pro Bono program has real world impact. And so I'm wondering if you can give some examples of work that you're aware of or that you've done or you've seen done by students that just made you sit back and go, wow. And I'll tell you, because Deb knows this, that actually one of my children happens to be trans, and we actually used a current Berkeley Law student through the gender and name change workshop to do the paperwork for us. For that, our son's gender marker, new birth certificate, new name changed to the court, and it was during COVID, so it was like extra difficult to kind of navigate. Courts were closed, what that looked like, et cetera, et cetera. But he really wanted his driver's license, and so on. So anyway, I mean, I think the real world impact is like really extremely significant for in a variety of ways, and just enriches everyone's lives at the law school. But yeah, if you know, Deb, you're welcome to start, but if anybody else wants to join in or jump in, that would be great. And sort of a high note to end on before we just take questions.
I'm really excited to hear what the students say because I know that they have personal experiences, but I'll just share a couple. And I wanted to say that these highlights in this real world impact happens on an individual level and on a policy level. So Kristen clearly spoke to the impact that it can make on one person and one family, which is really huge. And our students do that in so many ways. So every year, our students are able to work with a client and secure affirmative asylum for them. Every year, our students are able to help a fellow Berkeley Law student file their DACA renewal application. And every year, we have students that are working to keep people housed in our tenants' rights workshop. We talked about BLAST, and Yara talked about the Kentucky trip. Last year, because of COVID, all of our BLAST work was remote, and it blows my mind what our students were able to do. And one example I wanted to give was, I'm gonna just drop in the Q&A, just drop it. I'm gonna try, but I can't really answer it because there's no question to it. So I'm gonna try to figure this out.
You could put it in the chat, you're allowed.
Oh, okay, I'll put it in the chat. Thank you, that's what I wasn't sure about. So this is a report that our students researched and drafted for the Mississippi BLAST trip on pretrial detention. And our students updated me recently. So the report was phenomenal. The Office of the State Public Defender in Mississippi asked us to do a formal release of the report from UC Berkeley so that they could use it in their statewide advocacy. And then our student leaders of the BLAST trip for this year, which is going to continue along the research and follow threads that the office wanted them to follow up on, just attended a Zoom panel that the Office of the State Public Defender held for all of the public defenders throughout the state, using the report to teach them about things that they should be doing and about what's going on. And our students produced that report and did that research remotely through phone calls and interviewing judges and public defenders throughout the state of Mississippi. So it's really cool what our students do. And I'm gonna drop a few other just stories that you can follow up on later about work that our students have done, from representing folks in workers' rights situations to drafting public comments like Yara talked about in the Prisoner Advocacy Network. We also have students that are drafting comments currently in the consumer justice space. It just, the list goes on and on. I can't begin to summarize it. And so I'd love to hear from the students that are here today about their experiences and what they've seen.
Will I be forced to call on people? That's the question.
I mean, mine's mostly just seeing someone just get out and be free, you know, be free. Like, just on, yeah, I think it was Tuesday, yesterday. It was just yesterday. We had a meeting for the Post-Conviction Advocacy Project, and part of the meeting is what we got to meet with a couple of people who were just recently released, that they got paroled. The cool thing about the organization that we partner with is called Uncommon Laws. They'll hire folks like that. So they're on staff with the organization that supervises the work on that slip, or partners on the work on that slip. And they, you know, and to see them come in and speak to us, and to know that one of them was actually released because of a 3L that just like graduated this year, is who worked with them and got them out of prison. Like, I mean, it's just like, people are, you can immediately see how you're helping people in a slip like that.
My pause was because I was responding to one of the Q&As, but it was like, how do you manage like your slips in school, which if Chantel and Yara have answers to that, they can also type it in. But if the question was like things that have been like valuable or like you've seen like real impact. One of the things in the police review project, I actually worked on 2 cases, and it was the same client twice who had really bad interactions with Berkeley police. So I got to develop a rapport with this individual and sort of help him advocate for himself. And we got very good outcomes in both situations where the police owned up to the fact that they did not follow their policy and committed some wrongdoings. And then my foster education slip just recently, My foster youth actually told his teacher and a couple of people at the school, like, I'm feeling unsupported, which was like him like advocating for himself, which was like a huge step, because previous to that, I don't think that he was even trying to say things like that because he didn't think people would listen to him or respond. So like, not only like me advocating for him, but him like feeling like he would be responded to and people care about him. So that was like really cool to see.
I agree with everything that's said. And also just like having the opportunity to engage in a slip is very special, because the client or complainant, they're coming to you in a very sensitive time, like when they're in a crisis. So I personally have found happiness and joy by just simply being a support system for them, like answering their questions, being available, explaining the process to them, and things like that. And now that I'm co-leading a slip, I feel like I'm just like reliving everything that I felt as a 1L, like through the 1L's eyes, because I'm overseeing so many students, and it's really nice to see and feel the passion that the 1L's are now experiencing.
So I know that you responded in part in the Q&A section, Evan, but I actually think it's a question that I'd love to hear from others or everyone on, which is that question of, okay, so this is great. You guys do a million things. Like, you're also students paying a lot of tuition to go to law school, to get a degree. You know, do you have any strategies or tips? How have you managed kind of striking the balance between what you're doing in the classroom and what you're doing outside of the classroom? And maybe Chantal, do you want to start? Especially now that you're leading or co-leading a slip.
Yeah, I think I'm still learning. I think just I've been trying to just block off certain times of the day. Like, this is when I'm gonna do like police review project stuff, and this is when I'm gonna do school stuff. But I think that I'm still learning how to balance.
Yeah, it's elusive. It's I mean, okay, also I'm also, last year I was the 1L representative to the Student Association at Berkeley Law, and this year I'm a co-president. And I do other things like Law Students for Justice in Palestine, which is very like organizing heavy and all of these things. But to me, if I don't do those things, I cannot do law school. Like, it's really important for me to just be connected to my why and just actually making progress on that why while I'm in law school, because it's really easy to forget, again, if you're just sitting there reading cases from 100 years ago and being sad about how racist they are. You know, like, it's really important to have that. So for me, what's worked is just be really disciplined about my time management. Again, I'm not really perfect at it or anything, but you kind of have a sense of when things are gonna peak, like when your schoolwork is going to peak, you know, when your big papers are going to be due, you know, when finals are coming. So you have a sense of what lies ahead. And I think with a little like planning ahead and just discipline on your time management, you'd be able to you know, if you really want to do it all, you can. But also, like, just know that there's always like next year and the year after that, you don't have to do it all right away.
I can answer it, and then it also leads into the question that a new one that we got in the Q&A, and that it really is part of your education in law school, because it's like practical experience. Like, you have your theory and your doctrine, your classes, and you need to put down time on your calendar. Like, from 3 to 5, I'm going to work on my pro bono slip. And for me, I went straight through to law school through college. So I didn't have a lot of legal experience, and I drew upon all of my pro bono work to get my internships and jobs, because that was the legal experience that I had. And you master the element of the polite fight, which is advocating and yet being nice. Because if you think advocating, I always think, you know, like arguing or yelling at people, but you have to do so in like a really nice and polite way, which is something that the pro bono work teaches you.
It's so funny. Someone once asked me what the most useful thing I learned in law school was, and I said it was the ability to write a nice, nasty letter, which was like actually extremely helpful dealing with schools around special education, dealing with, you know, this errors on credit reports. I mean, there's just so many ways that's like an important skill to have. And others, I'm sure, Deb, you might want to chime in on this, or things like client interviewing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
research, which is a huge part of being an attorney, your writing skills, definitely sitting across from a client and earning their trust. knowing how to ask questions and how to listen, and how to work with others. Being a student leader is a whole nother learning experience, and people management, communication. It's difficult, and those are tasks that you need to become a successful attorney. I was also going to say, in terms of the balancing in time, one of the things that I just sent an email to our 1Ls about is to remind them that they can turn off their pro bono brain for finals. So we do remember that our students are law students, and we work with our supervising attorneys to make sure that they have the break that they need during reading period to study and prepare for final exams. So I was just going to mention that as well, because we remember that you guys are students.
I'm handing it off to Chelsea, who will take care of us for the next 10 minutes. Thank you so much. I am not ending this webinar as I click leave. I'm saying it to the universe so that doesn't end. But thanks everyone, and I will catch up with you soon. Appreciate your time.
All right, so we have 9 minutes left. Are there any other questions? Or Yara or Chantel, if you wanted to address this last open question about other ways that the Pro Bono program has helped you grow as a law student and aspiring lawyer. Maybe we heard a little bit from Evan and from Jean Alvarez.
I'll jump in. I mean, like you're doing real work. I mean, it's not like you're pretending or rehearsing. You're doing real work. You're doing the things exactly what you're going to be doing. You're helping write motions. Doing research will be part of a brief or a pleading or whatever it is. I mean, it's actually real work. So I think any practice you can practice while you're in law school under supervision is going to help you be a better lawyer when you graduate. So I was like surprised how much they were just like, no, really go do the thing. You can spread your wings and fly. You know enough. So there's a lot of trust, but you do have a lot of supervision. You have a huge support system. So if it feels like too much, you always have someone to like fall back on and ask, like, am I doing this correctly? Can you read this thing and make sure it makes sense? There's always, you have that to fall back on.
Yeah, I feel like I've been talking about like passion a lot, wear my heart on my sleeve. But I do think you learn a lot of like mechanical things like oral advocacy and writing, but I also think you learn like how to listen to someone, like empathy if you don't have that already, like balancing clients and really caring for people. And I think that's something that lawyers should keep in mind, that you're dealing with real people with real problems and you should really meet them where they are. And I think working in pro bono with people that come from different walks of life has showed me that. But I already knew that already, but it just kind of showed me that already. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Great, thank you. So I don't see any other open questions, and we have about 7 minutes left, but I'm wondering if the students have any kind of closing thoughts or advice that you would give to any prospective candidates. You all are 2Ls, and so you were in these folks' shoes not too long ago. So do you have any advice as they're navigating the admissions process and coming to sessions like this and thinking about law school in the future?
I have two things to like sort of add as closing thoughts. It was interesting. The question was like, what is pro bono? I only knew pro bono from Grey's Anatomy when they did pro bono surgeries, which is they like did surgeries for free. And that put panic in me because I was like, I don't know how to be a lawyer yet. Like, it is guided. There are attorneys that help you. They're not just like throwing you into it. Well, they do throw you into it, but they throw you into it with directions. And then they say, come back to us if you have questions. So it's very well supported and there's not any legal malpractice going on. So just like clearing that up. And then with regards to pro bono sort of being like a touchstone or a culture at Berkeley Law, after I got into law school, I don't know how it happened, but I got contacted by like a current student, and they had saw that I was the tutor in the past, had a lot of educational experience. And they're like, hey, like the foster education slip might be of interest to you. I don't know how that happened, but that speaks to the fact that it's ingrained in the culture. And then I joined and then I became a leader. And that's all from a student reaching out to me and saying, this looks like something you would want to do. So I've really benefited from it just being central to the Berkeley Law experience.
Advice. Number one, you are not your LSAT score. You are not your GPA. You are so much more than that. Take it one day at a time, study, do your best, but whatever happens, it's not the end of the world. And I mean, a place like Berkeley does a very holistic review of your application. Your LSAT score is one part of 1/3 of that review. Still do your best, but it is not the end of the world. Drink water, stay hydrated. Take care of yourself, take care of yourself. And it's really going to be important for you to come into law school rested, rejuvenated, reset, with a lot of spaciousness and capacity and all of that around you, because you just kind of hit the ground running in law school. So do the things that you love beforehand and still make time to do the things that you love while you're in law school. That's very important. And just, it's an adventure. You're in for an adventure, and you get the best part is that you get to choose your adventure. So
I was gonna say something similar. I think it's hard when you're in application season to not worry and to be on Reddit. I was on Reddit all the time when I was applying. I don't think it's healthy. I would say, yeah, just give yourself grace because you deserve it, and you always end up where you're meant to be, is what I'd say.
Deb, any advice or closing thoughts?
I think that when you do arrive at law school, and hopefully it's Berkeley Law, but whichever law school you end up at, I would just encourage you to be open to different opportunities and different experiences, and not feel pressured to follow a particular path. That's something that I felt empowered to do, and I've had a weaving one, and it's been directed by what I was passionate about at that moment. And if you authentically follow what you care about, you will end up in positions that you really enjoy and learn from. So don't do what you think you're supposed to do what you care about, what you're passionate about, and you will be successful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who attended, and thank you to our panel. I hope you all have a good rest of your evening.